So as mentioned, this is the second virtual happy hour. This is an extension from April. We did National Humor Month and celebrated as we normally do on an international level, had a number of events, really loved that process of getting together, sharing some different ideas, having a different theme and a topic. So we decided to continue that. Last month, we talked about change. And perhaps the biggest change that many of us are going through in this current moment, or the biggest one that we're all upon a precipice of, is a change of AI, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is how AI is going to, today we weren't necessarily going to discuss how it's going to impact the entire society level. I'm not sure that's the context for what we want to talk about today, but rather how we can at least have a little bit of fun in whatever change is going to be happening in the future from a creative perspective, from the idea of how we can maybe enjoy or work a little bit more, or at least have a fun little break from that process. So as mentioned, I know we'll be having some people join us as we go through, but we're already almost 5 minutes past the hour, so we can go ahead and jump into what we're talking about today. So as mentioned, this is the virtual happy hour. It's an excuse for us to get together, to have some fun, explore a new topic, and also hopefully create a more enjoyable work environment for ourselves and potentially other people as well. I know that, one of the things that we are trying to do with the Humor That Works community is to create a space to step away from the harmful news cycle, to step away from the algorithms that are constantly trying to attract for our attention, and rather create some actual human connection, which is nice and somewhat ironic given that today we're talking about AI. And the human connections, perhaps, that it can help us to generate. Now, I think AI is a really interesting intersection of my passions and my background. As some of you may know, I have a degree in computer science and engineering from the Ohio State University. And I do always say the part so that they don't take away my degree. For many, many months, I had actually right behind me, instead of this artwork, I instead had my diploma from the Ohio State University, which my wife was always a little bit confused by, because my wife is German, and she's like, I don't understand why you people from the US always tend to put your diploma on the wall. Like no other countries really do that unless they legally have to, unless they're like a medical doctor, et cetera. And I was like, well, in the US, our higher education is a little bit more expensive. So technically my diploma is the most expensive piece of artwork that we own. That's why it's going up on the wall. But instead, it has now been replaced by the beautiful artwork of a local Panamanian artist who happens to be so local that she lives with me. In fact, this artwork behind me is that of my 2-year-old daughter, with the help of my wife as well. But we got it framed and we thought, hey, it's beautiful abstract work. So that's what we have behind us. But today we are talking about AI. So this is an interesting intersection for me, because degree in computer science and engineering, 10 plus years of doing improv and stand-up. And so this idea of combining the logic of something like engineering for a creative output for things like stand-up and improvisation or humor speaking, et cetera, is actually a really good fit for what AI could potentially do. Now, before we jump in, I am curious how much you have already played with AI, if at all. So drop in the chat your level of familiarity with AI. Are you still unsure of whether we're talking about artificial intelligence or maybe applied improvisation? Some of us in the applied improv space use AI. Or are you on the constantly playing with it? Yeah, Bianca says almost daily. Tanya says, okay, I've attended a few webinars to understand a little bit more about it. Some of you might be, I'm an AI avatar right now. That's why you can't potentially see me. Although that is an interesting aspect of AI, because and wherever you kind of fall on the scale, the reality is that you are likely interacting with it on a pretty frequent basis, because you have things like Google Maps and it figuring out traffic and rerouting you based on what potential traffic is out there has components of it to AI. Same thing with predictive text. Way back to, do you all remember when we had those the T9 predictive text phones, where it wasn't, you had a full key, you didn't have a full keyboard, you had to if you wanted to hit C, if you wanted to type the letter C, you had to hit 2 like 3 times. I don't know if you remember that. There's some predictive text as part of that. A lot of times those would learn over time. Things like Alexa and Siri voice assistants is certainly a component of AI. Social media algorithms is a big part of social AI. The use of these avatars in Zoom is also AI. I don't know if you all ever jump into these, but I can be a dog right now, kind of talking to you all, and the mouth is moving, and I get eyebrows going on, and the ears don't really move a little bit. But yeah, like even this is a component of AI. I will say this is also how I entertain my daughter sometimes, is via Zoom call. We'll jump on and I'll talk to her like a dog. That all of these are small components of AI, but what's changed is really this new kind of form of AI, what people are calling generative AI. And this is AI that with very limited human input, it can create particularly relatively good output. So that's what's changed. And they've gotten really, really good. And also there's been a lot of advancements from a technology side, et cetera, yada, 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 yada. And so that's what brings us to today. Now, that's not to say that there aren't concerns with AI. I'm curious, go ahead and drop in the chat, what concerns are you aware of, and or what concerns do you have yourself about artificial intelligence, about AI, of what potentially could go wrong? Right. Yeah. So fraud automation. So yeah, creating fraud at scale and creating super hyper realistic phishing campaigns related to specific people could certainly make it easier. Spreading misinformation is it's faster to create. You can also start to customize that for people. Yeah. The question is like, does everything creative start to feel uncreative? If writing a haiku used to require human creativity and input, if you can now just put in to ChatGPT and say, hey, write a haiku about blank, and it's pretty solid, does that make things less creative? Skynet, yeah, possibly destroying humanity, and people being afraid of. There are plenty of concerns. There's also ethical concerns, such as a car that is autopilot itself, making decisions about if there's an accident and who to avoid, et cetera. There's privacy is a big one with the vast amount of data that is out there. There's tremendous bias that can come into play. In computer science, we always had this terminology when it comes to data is garbage in, garbage out, right? If you feed a bunch of very bad or unstructured, et cetera, type of data, then the output is only going to be good as that input. The same is true for AI. If you train AI on a bunch of biased data, so let's say you have bias in stopping people on the street, right? Stop and frisk, that was big in New York City. If you took all that data of like who was stop and frisk, and AI learns on that, then it starts to have that same bias that the people had in the first place, right? So that's a huge kind of concern. Job displacement, particularly to knowledge workers. Automation has always been this thing where it's like, oh yeah, okay, so farmers have lost some of their jobs, et cetera. But now it's knowledge workers. Now it's people like, oh, could AI replace a lawyer? Well, in one case in New York, a lawyer tried to write an entire brief using AI and it got submitted to court. It's just that he didn't fact check any of it and it referenced cases that did not exist, right? So there are some still challenges to trying to replace some knowledge workers. And then also another big one is the socioeconomic impact, is to say, is this a thing that is actually going to be more equitable for people? Now it creates the ability to create content for a lot of different people, or is it going to be a scenario of the rich get richer? So all of those are concerns. The cliche right now that's pretty popular is that AI won't steal your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will, right? Those are not the things that we're going to address today. I just want to be aware that they do absolutely exist, but our focus is going to be how to have a little bit of fun with AI, how to explore it a little bit more as a creative tool. But there is one last concern to kind of chat or think about when it comes to even the creative work with AI, and that is copyright. And so I'm curious, who do you think should own the copyright of a work created via AI? Anyone have any thoughts? You can either drop it in the chat or you can also come off of mute if you want to kind of share, but who should own the copyright of something created via AI? Yeah, so Mattis says no one. And in fact, that's kind of what the US is saying right now. They're saying if works are predominantly created by AI, then the creator of it, the prompt engineer of it, doesn't own the copyright, and the company that built the AI doesn't own the copyright. So Alfonso says, oh, but the company should. That's what some groups are doing. So there is a music creation service called Boomi, which allows you to very quickly generate and create music. And they own all the copyright to any songs that you create. And then they will publish it to Spotify and Apple and iTunes, et cetera. Now they're giving a cut to the people who are creating that, but they technically own the copyright. So if you were to write a #1 Billboard hit using their AI tool, they would technically own all the copyright to it. Aaron says it should be a Creative Commons license. It's made from the public, and so it should remain in the public, right? So it is an interesting question. This is a really important one for us to understand, because if you were to write, say, an entire novel using exclusively AI, people could copy that and publish it themselves with no real issue or concern, at least according to US law. Each different regions, the EU is still working through some of their kind of guidelines, Japan, et cetera. All these different regions are going to have their own different thoughts, which is also really interesting, where you think about, okay, if someone is living in one region and they use AI from a different region to use it, who actually follows the copyright rule, right? And Renata gives us a very nice response of saying, hey, it depends. It depends really kind of on how much work goes into it as well. And that's where the really blurry line is, to say, if I use AI to help supplement my writing of a speech or writing of a book, and I use it for different components, but then I change a lot of it and then go back, etc., then we get into this really kind of murky area that is hard to define. The other question, last kind of concern question, then we're going to jump into some fun, is should AI be able to train on copyrighted works? Drop in the chat what do you think, if they should be trained, if you should be able to train on copyrighted works. Because the way that an AI works, high level, if you're not familiar, many of you probably are, is essentially you give it a bunch of good examples of something that you want it to do, whether that is writing a story or creating an image or whatever, or hey, this is art. You give it a bunch of good examples. You say, this is good examples of this stuff. It starts to learn, okay, these are certain kind of statistical probabilities for this to be a good thing. And then at a human level, you have to go back and refine and test that. And then you can create new outputs from after having all of these different inputs. And so one of the ways to train that is to say, okay, here are a bunch of best-selling books, right? Fiction books. This is really good work. Okay, now create a new one, right? And so should they be able to train on the copyrighted work? Some say for a fee. Yes, if you pay for it. This is, people say, oh, we should pay for it. Because that is interesting, because you think about it at a human level, it's like, okay, if you read The Great Gatsby and then decide you want to write your own kind of book in a similar kind of way, do you have to pay any usage right to Great Gatsby, right, for having been inspired by that form or that style of writing? Well, probably not. But what if you do that in mass at scale with a bunch of different books or with a very specific kind of form? You're also seeing this in terms of the news of like copyright strikes for YouTubers who are creating, Eminem's, like it sounds like an Eminem song with an Eminem sounded voice with a completely AI generated script. It's like, well, okay, yeah, that's someone's name and likeness. And so that becomes a different conversation, right? So, right, a lot of kind of murky areas. Something for us to consider as we go through what we talk about today, and if you're going to use what we talk about today in a commercial process. Because what we're going to do is we're going to have for the rest of the time today, we're going to talk about some different tools, have a little bit of fun creating some stuff, and also talk about how some of this could be used for practical reasons, not just kind of for the fun of some of these ideas. So what can AI do? I'm curious, what have you seen or what have you read stories about of like interesting use cases of AI, right? We've already talked about AI trying to be used in the courtroom. There's AI that we talked about at Google Maps, et cetera. But have you seen other interesting use cases of it? Drop it in the chat, because there are a bunch. I was doing a little bit more research yesterday and found out that there is an AI tool for a personal stylist. So you can upload your kind of intended desired style, and then it can already start to adjust and style things a little bit differently for you. Like, oh, you should buy this shirt. There's also AI for drawing and creating, of course. There is AI for better research. So if you're big into academic research, there's a search engine that's very specific to academic research to try to give you more specific examples. Yeah, photography art is a big one. Subsidizing low or complex tasks. Yeah, outsourcing to people, repetitive tasks, things like macros and things like that, for sure. For me, there's 20 plus ones that I was looking at over the doing recent research on, and I know this is small text, so if you need to, you can kind of show my screen, and we can share this out later as well if people are interested in kind of seeing this. This is just an interesting kind of list of things that I started to see. So some of them are productivity based, so it is things like summarizing the meeting notes of a recorded meeting. There's business related ones like how to create a business logo. You can create a business logo and a creative brief, etc. So sorry, Bianca, some of the design work maybe is going to AI. Probably not going to be as good as the work that you do, but it does exist. For the teachers out there, there's AI that can grade papers for you. There's a way to get new recipes. There's certain tools that you can go in and put in the ingredients that you have in your cupboard, and it will spit out a potential recipe for you to try. There's even one a tool from NVIDIA that will always make you have eye contact on video. So you could be looking over here, kind of reading a script, and then it would use AI to change so that your eyeballs are always looking at the screen. And it's kind of actually creepy if you take a look at it. There are some also interesting ones. There are ways to quote unquote clone yourself. So there's AI that you can use, and you can feed it audio of your voice, and then it will start to replicate your voice. That's 11 Studios. There's even ones that you can do of your avatar. So synesthesia is you do kind of a process to create a video of yourself, and then eventually you can make the video of yourself say different things, right? So there's a ton out there. There's also some very, very fun ones. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those fun ones. And for this, I apologize in advance. I'm going to share my screen for a bulk of what we're going to do today, which can just make me tiny in a little box, but I think it's much more fun to see than it is for me to just kind of abstractly talk about these things. So for example, so hopefully you're able to share my screen and or see my screen. Can I get kind of a thumbs up if you can see the screen? You're good. This was something fun that I discovered yesterday that I can do. We'll see if you can hear this. We'll try to open that. Yeah, we're going to use media player. We'll see if this comes up. Should have preloaded that.
Andrew Tarvin is my personal hero. Frankly, one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Yeah. Did you all hear that? Did you hear that? The praise that I got? One more time from Arnold. Yeah.
Andrew Tarvin is my personal hero. Frankly, one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a tool called Fake You. So if you go to fakeyou.com, you can basically put in for small amounts of text, you can put in that, and then you can use different voices to then kind of say that text for you. And one of the big popular models that seems to happen a lot, so this is Fake You. You can go to the AI tools of text to speech is a common kind of phrase. It's basically taking something that you write down, turning it into speech. And then you can use kind of, okay, you can be Queen Elizabeth, or you can be various cartoon characters. You can be, you know, famous voices, Walter White, etc. And now the way a lot of these tools work from a user perspective is that many of them are free. If you log in, if you create an account, if you give them your email address, you're then able to use things and try things a lot of times for free for non-commercial purposes. And a lot of times if you do that, it will have a delay in terms of processing, but they're like, hey, if you give us $7 a month or $15 a month or whatever, then you can use them more, you can download them, you can use them for commercial works, and the processing a little bit faster. So that's one that you can use is fakeyou.com, and you can have Walter White say nice things about you, or mean things about you, I guess, if you want to. So that is Fake You. Another one that I tried recently, this one takes a little bit longer, but tried recently is you can do AI generated headshots. So you upload a bunch of pictures of yourself. In this case, I think it was like 5 for this particular tool called Hotpot. And then it will generate headshots for you. And some of these I think are okay. In terms of if they look like me or not. All of them have a slight edge to, like, there's something like about these that make me say this is not real. right? There's something about them that is like, this is slightly off. If they were really small as an icon, like some of these are, maybe okay. The background is a little bit too much. This, I feel like I'm a real estate agent in this picture for whatever reason. This one, my eye is weird, like kind of droopy. And then you start to notice there's always something slightly off with these. This, I have a way too big of a forehead. This one's not bad. I think this one is probably the best one, most accurate one I could maybe try to get away with. There's a smile. It doesn't do teeth very well. For whatever reason. This one just weird, me leaning in. This is a half picture one. This one, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, feel like I kind of look like Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if that's accurate. I feel like there's a slight Abraham Lincoln vibe there. This one is too handsome version of me. Like, I don't think I'm like that attractive. Some other good ones. There's one where the forehead is just like, I know I have a big forehead, but like this is even more pronounced as a forehead. This one, I'm like a deer in headlights, scared of what's going on. I feel like this is actually probably like if I was on The Bachelor, this would be the picture that they would use. This is just like too fake. This is like me warbled. That doesn't look like me. And then this one is like a weird tooth thing kind of going on. And so as you can see, we're not quite at the stage that this is working perfectly. That particular tool, if you're interested in it, is called Hotpot AI. And there's different versions of it. So you can do that, or you can do, right. So you can do the headshot version of it, or you can use it to then make a more kind of fantasy version of yourself, etc. We're not at the stage where I think this stuff is quite usable, where it's like, I'm not necessarily going to use one of those as my LinkedIn image, although according to like their social media, they're like, oh, you could totally do that. But the important thing to know about AI, or remember about AI, is that it generates very, very quickly. It improves very, very fast. It's constantly learning. It's constantly getting improved, especially with all of these people joining. That's essentially data where you can then give feedback to be like, yes, this works or this doesn't work. And we're all, in some ways, the trainers of AI. Anytime we use it, we're helping to build it. We're helping to grow. So those are just some fun ones to play with a little bit. The big one, of course, that most people use or reference or have probably heard of is ChatGPT, right? And ChatGPT is a large language model, which essentially means that it's able to generate text, and it's trained on a tremendous amount of text data to then be able to give you what is really like very big predictive text. And with different prompts, what we call prompt engineering, you can get it to do certain things. Right? Prompt engineering is simply the process of saying, okay, how do I get AI? How do I delegate this task and be specific enough in a way that it's going to give me a good output? And that is something that is true for using AI, and something that is true is if you want to be a good leader. And I think this is one of the changes with AI, is that everyone is going to have to learn certain leadership skills. Everyone's going to have to learn how to delegate and give clear tasks, because you're going to do that either with a human or potentially with AI. The other thing is that empathy and emotional intelligence become even more important, because that's not something that is natural to AI that's good. It's going to take a human component to say whether or not an output from AI is a good output, or is a good thing to do, or a good thing to try. So with ChatGPT, if you want to follow along with us, if you want to jump into ChatGPT itself, you are welcome to. We're going to do some fun prompts so that you don't necessarily have to, but if you want to, you can go to chat.openai.com. So chat.openai.com. And there you do have to sign up. So ChatGPT is one that you have to sign up for. You have to give your email address and a phone number for it to be able to kind of track that. And so you can sign up, but it is completely free for one of their versions. Yeah, so you can join us and follow along if you want. There is a paid version of ChatGPT, which is what I am using, which gives you the option to use things like plugins, as well as to use ChatGPT 4, which is basically a new version of ChatGPT. But yeah, you have those options. So just reading a quick, yeah, use photo of one of you. Yeah, so Renata shares kind of in the chat. If you can use photos of you when you're training any type of model, if you can use the photos like for the headshot generator that are pretty similar and that are good, accurate depictions of what you want them to be, that does tend to get better results. So we're in ChatGPT, and there's 3.5 and there's 4. If you sign up for the free account, everyone there will be using 3.5. So there's some fun things that you can do. So first of all, you can play different games with ChatGPT. So for example, you just type in your commands, you just say them, type them as if you were a text, and we can say, okay, let's play ChatGPT. And I'm going to mark an O in the one spot, and then it goes through, and now we're playing tic-tac-toe with AI. So it's just a fun thing of like, hey, I'm bored, I need something to do. I'm going to play through this process in a very graphical way. And so there's tic-tac-toe, there's Mad Libs, there's word association as well. So this is actually really good if you want to practice your creative skills. So word association is a great improv exercise to do. And a lot of times in improv, you would do this with a group of people. Right? You're in a group, whether virtually or in a circle around, and you're going to do kind of like word association, getting things going. Well, if you don't have someone to play with, you can also play with ChatGPT. So we can play, let's play word association. I'll respond. So the first word that they started with was sun. So we might think moon. It says stars. So we might say planets. We're in a space theme right now. Galaxy. We might say a TV show of like Galaxy Quest. Friends. Oh, that's a TV show. Amigos. Now we're talking Spanish. I don't know if I'll go into Spanish. Maybe I confused it by switching languages, right? But you're having this kind of word association back and forth, and now you're playing a game just to practice, right? It's just a warm up, a creative warm up. You can say, okay, what can I do when I'm bored? There's some games that it's not very good at that you can technically play. Scrabble is one of them. It's a terrible kind of interface for Scrabble, specifically in ChatGPT. Same thing for crossword puzzles. They don't work super well. But there is a fun game that I like called emoji translation. So you can play, let's play emoji translation. And this is another kind of fun excuse to kind of get together. And it's basically, okay, they started with ChatGPT gave a emoji combination of a sun, an umbrella, and a drink. Anyone have a thought to what that could translate to? Drop in the chat. What is a sun, umbrella, and drink translate to? I'm gonna guess, let's see, we might say vacation. Oh yeah, vacation. Let's try that. Vacation. Let's see what it says. We say vacation. Correct. They represent vacation. What I've recognized, what I've learned though, is that it's very kind of pleasant when it comes to these responses, where it will, like almost any response you give that's slightly related to the topic, it will say, yep, that's what I was thinking of. So it makes you feel good because it's like, yeah, that's correct. So vacation, I think, is a great example. We can also ask it to do the emoji. So we can say like a quote, like to be or not to be, represent that in emojis. And let's see what it comes up with. It's thinking, just a little back and forth. Okay, so it's like pondering. It's like, I don't know, drama. Which it may be pretty accurate for to be or not to be. And so this is certainly a fun game, but it is also something that we could start to use to add a little bit more humor into our own work. So for example, we could say, let's say I have to give a presentation about a certain subject. I could come in here and say, what's the emoji translation for this keyword that I need to include? And then maybe I play this as a game with my audience. Maybe I say, hey, just as a quick little fun thing, what we're talking about today is blank. It's a series of emojis. Any guesses as to what we're talking about, or any guesses to this idea, right? It's a game that you turn this game into a game to play with other humans, and then you could use AI to help you develop what that tool actually looks like, right? So those are just some simple fun games that we can play with AI itself. We can also use AI for ChatGPT specifically for things like writing copy. And this is a pretty big one. And this is one, I'm curious, if you've used ChatGPT before, what use cases have you used it for? Drop it in the chat. I'm curious, what have you used it for? Because my wife, I've introduced my wife to this. She used it to write so people have used it for email. My wife used it to write a going away speech or like a retirement speech for an old manager that she had that she didn't particularly like. And so she went to like, how do I write a retirement speech that is positive, but isn't too glowing, et cetera? Like she wrote a prompt for it. It took her a couple of iterations and eventually was like, okay, yeah, that works well. I've used it certainly to explore different ideas or different concepts. I've used it for, I used it earlier for this presentation. So when I was talking earlier, I was like, oh, what are some, in fact, I have it here. So the nice thing is that ChatGPT saves your texts. You can also now start to share them with people as well. But earlier I asked it, what are the concerns with AI? And it gave me a list, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right, that's good. I also asked it to, what are some examples of AI that we've been using for years that people don't realize are AI? And that's where I got some of the examples that I talked about: voice assistant, fraud detection, autocomplete, right? So it can give you this kind of first back and forth entry into ideas. Bianca says ChatGPT and I are currently remodeling the bathroom. I love it. That's a great example of it. Like, how would I actually do it? There's examples where people have used ChatGPT to help it build a custom Chrome extension from scratch. People use different components of AI to build video games. There's a lot of possibility within that. One thing to understand or recognize with ChatGPT in particular is that it will say things as if it is factually true without necessarily having a source for that. And it has gotten better over time. Earlier today, I asked it to write a bio for me because that's something that I know, like, I can predict whether it's accurate or not. And for the most part, it's pretty accurate. It's pretty glowing about me as well. I'm a multifaceted professional, known for my experience and expertise in field of humor, leadership, and communication. I have a passion for helping individuals and organizations. I made a significant impact. That feels pretty good. ChatGPT is glowing me up a little bit, but it's not always accurate. The first version that I did of this, probably about a month ago, and this is just kind of speak how quickly things change. It would give things about my bio that were slightly wrong. So it would say things like I went to Ohio University when I actually went to the Ohio State University. I said I graduated with a degree in computer science and mathematics. It was a degree in computer science and engineering. So there's sometimes these slight changes that we need to be aware of, especially if we're going to use them in work. And so, D says, states it very clearly, like, AI is overconfident. AI is that person who is like always confident in what they say, even when they're completely wrong. This is a great question from Paul, and this is what we're going to explore next, is to say, does ChatGPT have a sense of humor? Can it put together a comedy routine, or does it pull jokes from multiple comedians? For what I understand, it does, I think, start to write some of its own material, but it's not necessarily particularly good. So with that in mind, let's explore the creation of humor on AI. Drop in the chat, Paul or someone else, what's a topic that we should write some comedy about using AI? Anyone have a suggestion of a topic we should use? Something like not related to humor or AI. Maybe it is the COVID lockdown. Yeah, so we can do the pandemic. That might get political weirdly from AI. We'll talk inflation. Maybe Paul, maybe I'll get there, getting sober, right? These are all great examples. Let's start with inflation and build from there. So we've got, let's see, tell me. So you can do very simple. So you can say, tell me a joke about inflation. This is probably much more likely to spit out something that's maybe been said before, right? Why did the economists bring a helium balloon to the party? Because they wanted to demonstrate the concept of inflation the most uplifting way possible. So I guess technically that's a pun, right? So the balloon is relating inflation and uplifting, the fact that the balloon goes up. It's wordy. Not particularly well structured, but it is technically a joke. You could then extend it a little bit further, and you can say something like, write a 60-second comedy bit about inflation. And now it will work a little bit longer, right? So now it's kind of putting in the form of an actual set. And we won't read through this whole thing, but ladies and gentlemen, have you heard about this thing called inflation? It's like a party crasher that just won't leave. I mean, who invited it anyway? Probably the same person who invited kale to the buffet. That's actually kind of a funny line. I like that. Inflation is like that one friend who always shows up uninvited and ruins the fun. You're having a great time, enjoying your paycheck, and suddenly prices start skyrocketing. It's like the clearance section at a high-end boutique. Everything must go, and your money goes with it. You know, things are getting out of hand when you go to buy a gallon of milk and you need a second mortgage just to afford it. It's like the milk is bottled by a unicorn that only eats gold and diamonds, right? So pretty solid, I think, in terms of concepts, ideas, exaggeration. And kind of to Paul's point, the challenge with kind of using this at face value, though, is who knows if it's not just pulling this from other comedians. If it's been fed a bunch of material from different comedians, it's very possible that it is just kind of pulling these different jokes from different places. I don't know necessarily. I haven't necessarily heard. None of these things are like, oh, there's someone that definitely has a joke about that. but it is something that we have to then be conscious of. Hey, at least inflation is good for some people. You know, I'm talking about balloon artists. All right, that's kind of funny. Another thing that you can do with ChatGPT and kind of prompt engineering in general is if you start to give it a frame of mind to start to think about, you can actually get better or at least different results, right? So you could do the same prompt to write a 60-second bit about inflation, but then you can add a modifier to it, such as in the style of who's a comedian that we can use that's pretty well known? We'll say Chris Rock, in the style of Chris Rock, right? So now we're giving it that same prompt with a slightly different change, and it might be giving us some of the same examples, but it's changing the language a little bit. It's adding more emphasis, right? Let's talk about inflation, because you know what? Inflation is like that noisy neighbor that just won't mind their own damn business. You're sitting at home, chilling, enjoying your paycheck, and then suddenly, boom, prices start going up, and you're like, hold up, what just happened? Did the dollar take a trip to the Bahamas and come back all bougie? Right? It's a very different slight length, right? It's the jokes that are punchier. And what's interesting is about a lot of humor is that it is a lot of kind of the output of AI right now. It's really, really funny if you know the prompts for it. If you know that this is supposed to sound like Chris Rock and you already start to read it in Chris Rock's voice in your head, then it starts to be like, oh, that's funny and that's a great line and I like it and it's really good. If you don't know that, it's a little bit harder to tell, right? Same thing, there's a Ryan Reynolds did an AI, shot an AI commercial for one of the companies that he's with, Mint Mobile. And we can actually take a look at it because it's pretty solid, but it's solid because you know that it is AI. So give me just a second. Let me remember where I put that as a note. Here, this is my notes for this section. Boom, here. So we're gonna take a quick look at this. Because he's using it basically as a tool for marketing.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds, owner of Mint Mobile. You know, we're always looking for ways to save you money. So this year, we're kicking things off with an ad that I created using ChatGPT, the AI technology. This is what I asked it to write. I said, write a commercial for Mint Mobile in the voice of Ryan Reynolds. Use a joke, a curse word, and let people know that Mint's holiday promo is still going, even after the big wireless companies have ended theirs. This is what it wrote. Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here. Eerie. First of all, let me just say Mint Mobile is the shit. But here's the thing. All the big wireless companies out there are ending their holiday promos, but not Mint Mobile. We're keeping the party going because we're just that damn good. Give Mint Mobile a try. And hey, as an added bonus, if you sign up now, you'll get to hear my voice every time you call customer service. Just kidding, that's not really a thing. And stay classy, everyone. That is mildly terrifying, but compelling.
Yeah. All right. So knowing that
hey, it's Ryan Reynolds,
AI makes it a little bit funnier, right? The pretext of him saying, hey, this is AI, this is what it wrote. Now we can kind of laugh at what works about it, what doesn't work about it. It would be less funny if it was just here's a direct commercial. Also, speaking of algorithm and AI, you can start to get it for whatever reason, the full screen in it works. So you can start to see what types of things I'm watching. So these are comedians and things that I enjoy. So Tom Scott on YouTube, great for explaining things. Honest Trailers is just a great look at kind of funny movies. James Dane Caster is one of my favorite comedians. Daniel Thrasher is a YouTuber that is also very funny, etc. So hey, more AI in action of what you see. And yeah, seeing people's algorithm now is in some ways a way to learn a little bit more about them as a person, for better or for worse, right? You start to see that, or you share that in a screen share, can slightly be terrifying. Like, oh, so these are the types of things you're watching or looking at more frequently. Right, the fact that we know something is AI is what kind of makes it funny. But the interaction, right? So the thought in terms of overall creative output is, my suggestion wouldn't be that you are going to go into ChatGPT, be like, write me a funny thing about blank, and then boom, use it exactly as is. There still is a human component to this. And I think it's an important component to it, right? It's what adds your own personal flavor. It's what adds your own personal technique. But I do think that AI, ChatGPT in particular, can be really good for a first draft. it can be really good for like, help me explore this concept. Help me to come up with some ideas. What are the key points that we should be talking about? For example, right now we are working on a course that's based on one of the presentations that we did in Humor Month. We did an entire happy hour session on disconnecting from work at the end of the day. And we decided we're going to turn that into a micro course where we're going to make it a little bit more structured, et cetera. But it's going to basically be, how can you create an effective plan that when the workday ends, you're able to, one, process everything that happened at work, and then two, be more present for your family afterwards, to have the energy that you have for your hobbies and actually truly take that step away or disconnection from work, that disengagement from work for more energy and better work-life balance, et cetera. So we're working on a micro course of that. So we're using AI, ChatGPT a little bit to explore some of those concepts. What are the biggest challenges when it comes to disconnecting from work, et cetera? So that plus Google searches is part of our research process now. We're still doing content creation, the content writing, right? But it's helping us with this process that you can go in. If you do sign up for ChatGPT, so you can use 3.5 kind of as normal. If you purchase for $20 a month the other account, then you can get access, one, to GPT-4. So this is their latest model. So it's probably kind of even stronger, right? So we can now say, okay, write a stand-up comedy bit about inflation in the style of, we'll say Jerry Seinfeld this time, because he has a very distinctive voice, and see if ChatGPT is any better or worse, right? So it's a different model, but also with this model, you can use things like plugins, or it can also now search the web, right? So it's expanding some of these capabilities, some of these processes. And so ChatGPT tells us exactly what's happening. Seinfeld takes the stage, adjusts the microphone. So have you noticed this thing called inflation? You know, that magical process where money loses its value while you're sleeping? Who's doing the math on this one? I mean, I go to the store and pick up a candy bar. That same candy bar I got last week for $1.50. Now it's $2. I look at it. It's the same size, same weight. It hasn't gained any value. I can assure you of that, right? And what's interesting is it's putting laughter where it thinks that laughter would be, which is accurate and not accurate sometimes. Right? Inflation is like we're all in a slow motion race to bankruptcy and we can't do anything about it. Okay, that I think is that's a really funny concept, right? Is that it's this slow motion race to bankruptcy. And so you might do a prompt like this and be like, oh, that premise, I want to take and use that premise myself. How do I expand it? How am I going to make it my own? But this is just kind of giving us different ideas to explore. I asked my accountant about it. He says, Jerry, it's just the cost of living. Cost of living, I'm not doing anything different. I'm not living any better. If anything, I'm living worse. I had to downgrade from whole milk to 2%. You're telling me this is the cost of living? Pretty good. I mean, imagine if we applied this inflation concept to other things. Sorry, sir, your treadmill run is 20% longer today. It's just inflation. That's also another really great premise, right? And that is a common technique that we use in comedy. So you're seeing it start to pick up. Is a common technique that we would use is say, oh, it's kind of like this thing, or that would be like if blank, right? You create a metaphor. It's a very valuable technique that is pulling in kind of itself. So it's being like, oh, okay, that is an interesting way to explore that. What else could it be like? Maybe I don't want to do treadmill run because I'm not thinking about exercise, but it would be like if you needed more calories. Like, wouldn't it be nice if we had inflation for calories where we could eat more each day and actually, keep the same amount of weight? It's just inflation of our body adjusting, et cetera, right? So different ideas to explore. ChatGPT is, I think, the big one, probably the most popular one. You can also use Bard, which is Google's AI version of that. You can use Bing, which is ChatGPT, but kind of connected with the Bing search engine. So you can use that. Google Workspace, so the Google things like Google Docs and Google Spreadsheets, et cetera, they're starting to roll that out to other people as well. So you can start to use it in your Google Docs as it gets rolled out or as you pay for certain services, et cetera. So there's a lot of different options out there. There are also versions where you don't have to log into. So you can do ChatGPT without login, do that as a Google search, and you can find some of those tools. So that's ChatGPT, very wide, lots of uses for it. There are also other tools within the text space that are meant to be more specific, right? Because the problem with something very broad like ChatGPT is that it's very good at a large number of things, but it's not necessarily excellent at any specific one. So there are specific tools like Write Sonic, et cetera, that if you're like, I want to write copy for a website that is good with SEO and it's going to be a blog post. Okay, you may use ChatGPT for that, but you might get actually better results when you're using a tool like Write Sonic that is very specific for that. The AI writer from PixArt is also another one where you can say, okay, I want to write specifically ad copy. or I want to write a LinkedIn headline, or I want to write an Instagram caption. And it doesn't necessarily, like, these are like more specific. They're basically a lot of times using ChatGPT, but with very specific prompts. I did find this interesting, though, again, where it's not always good. I tried to, there's a section here for dad jokes, probably just for fun. Add your dad joke topic. So I was like, oh, okay, let's do golf. Why did the golfer always carry 2 pairs of pants in case he got a hole in one? Right, so that's a pretty normal one. I hit generate again to give me a new one. Why did the golfer always carry an extra pair of pants in case he got a hole in one? Okay, generate again. Why do golfers always carry extra pants just in case they get a hole in one? So apparently the only golf jokes that exists, according to this AI writer, is that you can get a hole in one of your pants. Right. So again, not always going to work. This is a really fun one. This isn't necessarily practical. I'll drop it in the chat. There is no login, so you can kind of do it as well if you would like. But this is called Quick Draw, and it's actually a way that you're training doodles for Google. And it's really kind of interesting to see because it gives you a prompt of what to try to draw, and then it's going to tell you what it thinks you're drawing as you draw it. And then at the very end, we'll kind of talk about, you can explore why it got that right. So we're going to do 6 of these real quick. So what I need to do is I need to draw a sheep in under 20 seconds. So I just start to draw a sheep.
I see garden hose.
Right. So it thinks
or
it's
cloud.
Garden hose.
Or shrub.
Now.
Oh, I know. It's sheep.
Yeah. Now it's a sheep. Now I got it. Okay. All right. Now you do a skyscraper.
I see street light.
Street
oh,
light?
I know.
Come on.
It's skyscraper.
Okay, got it. Quick. All right. Squirrel.
I see rainbow. Or ear.
Rainbow. Come on.
Or heart. Oh, I know. It's squirrel.
Now it's a squirrel. Okay. Now we do school bus. And there's 6 of these.
I see diving board.
A diving
or
board.
garden hose.
Come on, Google.
Or shoe.
I really
I see van. Or ambulance. Or car.
Oh, maybe I need to extend this further.
I see fire truck. Or truck.
Oh no. Truck, I didn't get it right. It didn't.
Sorry, I couldn't guess it.
It didn't get that one. Okay. What about this one?
I see heart.
Is this
I'm stumped.
Looks like. Yeah.
Oh, I know. It's stethoscope.
Yep. And this is the last one, a crayon. All right.
I see zigzag. Or line. Oh, I know. It's crayon.
Right. So what's interesting, so I figured out 5. So 1, it tells you what it sees as it goes, which I think is interesting. But then you can also pick one and it will explore a little bit more. It also thought what you were drawing first, it was sheep, but then it also thought maybe it was a rain cloud or just a cloud. And how does it know what a sheep look? It learned by looking at these examples drawn by other people, right? So it's talking about this process. So it's a really interesting kind of look into how something learned is, oh, okay, look, these are all these other examples of what sheep looks like. It feeds this as data, and then it starts to extrapolate or interpolate based on, okay, what you've just drawn. This is kind of what it looks like. So it's a fun kind of tool. It gives you, it's let's see, 6 times 20 seconds. So it's 2 minutes just of kind of fun doodling on your part. But then it also is a great way to showcase kind of how things are learning or how it's picking things up. Also in the space of drawing things, there's multiple art generators out there. So I use I use Firefly, which is from Adobe. So if you already pay for the Adobe suite, if you use Adobe Photoshop, etc., you can sign up for Firefly, which is a beta. This is another game that I play with my toddler. She calls it Beyond Quack Quack. Because when she was learning the word airplane, we would always say an airplane goes biang. And so she calls an airplane a biang, and then a quack quack is a duck. And so a lot of times we'll come in here and just, she calls it biang quack quack. Because the very first time I did this, I said a plane, or like I said, a duck flying next to an airplane. A ducky, that might throw it off. So I'll do duck. All right. And we generate from that. And then in this process right now, it's in the style of art. And it's a square image. And now it's going to generate some possibilities of a duck flying next to an airplane. It sometimes gets confused. So this one's pretty solid, right? Regular airplane, regular duck. This one, it kind of confused the two and drew an airplane that is also a duck. Right. AI art generators aren't, some of them are not particularly good at faces or things like animals, but within tools like this, you can then change, or you can give it, right, this prompt engineering, different prompts. So you can say, instead of art, what if we made it more of photorealistic, right? Does that give us better results or worse results? You can do it in different styles of digital art or neon, right? So this is like, oh, these look actually pretty accurate. You can also then iterate on different ones to say, hey, show me similar ones to this one that I just created. You can generative fill. So you can say, okay, this one I think is pretty good, but let's fill it out a little bit more. So generative fill is where you add particular content. So we want to insert something here. Oh no, here. I actually haven't used it here. So what if we put something there, right? So you can add things to it. You can subtract things from it, etc. So Firefly is one you can use if you have the Adobe suite. Crayon, which I can drop in the chat, is a completely free one that you can use. And so this is another AI generator, gives you some of the same options, but you can go in and kind of say, draw me this thing. The use of this partially for fun. You could also use it then for artwork, that if you're going to post to, say, social media, you could use it as a starting point for slides. But there are also AI tools specifically for generating presentations. Google Slides is starting to incorporate it and what it does. But there's also a tool called Beautiful AI that I've used some, that basically is hey, you tell it what kind of slides you want it to make, and it creates them pretty quickly, and you can iterate on it, faster, etc. Right? Because some of this stuff is for, hey, this is really fun, creative use of this. Some of it is like, no, this is actually going to help me in my work. One of the tools that I think is really interesting that can be used is something called Super Meme. And this is a way that this will generate memes for you based on a topic, right? So if we go back to our topic on inflation, we can say, okay, convert any text to meme, enter a text, etc. And let's find something about inflation and see what it comes up with. It might be too generic of a term, but we're going to see. All right, inflation. Yeah. All right. So yeah, when you look at the price of your groceries after every shopping trip, inflation, why you got to be so high. That's actually like not even the exact form of this particular meme, but okay. When you check your bank account after, hey, inflation hits the economy, like I'm having a little bit of a financial crisis. When you realize your life savings won't be able to keep up with the current rate of inflation, I'm never going to financially recover from this. Me trying to stretch my paycheck to survive through inflation. This one's not too bad. This meme. Me happily, I would say me angrily paying $50 for a sandwich afterwards, me trying to balance my budget after the latest inflation hike. So it's about balance. Or something about a polar bear when you see the price at the grocery store and realize inflation is a real thing, right? So it's like, hey, none of these they may not be the most perfect thing, but they are a starting point. So let's say you are someone who is increasingly out of touch with the youth, like myself, as I continue to get a little bit older. It's like, oh, maybe memes are a way I want to try to communicate, or maybe I just want to put something fun or interesting on social media. Okay, I can come up with something myself, or I could use Super Meme as a starting process to kind of like generate a couple of ideas. So supermeme.ai, I'll drop that one in the chat as well. This one has a free account where you get 20 free credits. That's what I've been using. So right down here, I have 18 free credits remaining. And then after that, it's a paid service, right? So some of these, a lot of these, you've got the opportunity to kind of do a quick trial from and share, but one worth checking out if you wanted to create memes for a particular topic. So those are some of the fun ones that I've started to see. As I've mentioned at a high level, the starting point, I think, for a lot of these things is it's a great way to explore an idea. It's a great way to get a first decent rough draft, but there's still a lot of human kind of interaction that has to come in. There's still a lot of humanity that you should bring to it yourself. And that's only going to improve really over time. As we think about it, this is going to probably, AI is going to continue to get better and better. And so it's now is a good time to just jump in, to at least be in the let's play around phase and know what's somewhat possible. And it might be a thing in the future that you need to go deeper into. What we've been talking about today is much around the invention persona, right? So at a broader context, when we talk about this skill of humor, we say there's 7 primary competencies that you need to be good at for being an effective humorist. And this, what we've been talking about today, is primarily around two particular personas or two particular skill sets. The invention or creation persona, right? So AI can help us to create a first draft of something, to get some concepts out there. But another really important competency comes into play when it comes to any type of creation, particularly that generated by AI. And that is the skeptic. That is the consideration persona, to say, okay, what is actually factual about this thing that was generated, or what could work, or what biases might exist in this thing, what might not be good about what was created, what are the ethical and kind of considerations, etc. So those are the two personas that we've explored today. We did recently launch a book called The Skill of Humor Playbook. So if you're interested in exploring more about your individual skill of humor and the different personas connected to it, you can find that at humor.me/playbook. And if you enjoyed this happy hour, we're going to be doing these once a month in the community with different topics. We're very open to suggestions in terms of themes of what you would like to hear us cover when it comes to creating a more enjoyable work experience. So jump into humor.me/community. Many of you are already a member of that. That's how you a lot of times register for these events. But it's a great place to step away from the harmful news cycle, a way to step away from the algorithms and connect with some like-minded people who are also interested in creating that enjoyable work experience. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you're joining us from. And until next time, go out and have some fun. Thanks all.